Thanks, Josh. My name's Igor. I'm Vice President Global Academic and Institutions. We work with all the universities and research organizations globally, and very happy to support your group as well. Over to you, Ash.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm Ash. So I've started with Research Solutions, obviously, responsible for academic research and the regions across the UK, Nordics, and Ireland.
Awesome. And I am Josh, and I'm one of the co-founders of Cite and the former CEO of Cite. I'm now Chief Strategy Officer at Research Solutions. And I'm going to tell you about the history of Cite because I think it's not something we just spun up because AI is around, right? We've been scite.ai since 2018, and we've been thinking about this for a long time. So myself and Igor are both researchers. I finished a PhD back in 2015 in cell biology at Virginia Tech. And really, Cite was born out of my frustrations as researchers and in response to growing concerns from the community around reproducibility, around trust, around information overload. And so thanks for letting me share the screen. And so the way that, I kind of want to introduce the tools, like, yes, we will get to a demo, but I think it's useful to put into context, like, why did we get started? What are the problems we're trying to solve? Like, how long have we been thinking about this? And, again, how do we think of this from like, there's a lot of different AI tools and whatnot there. What separates us, right? Is it the fact that we're publishing papers on how we built it? Is it our partnerships with publishers? What is it? And so, going back, and Anna, you teed this up very nicely for me, like, what is the history of Cite? Well, in 2012, this paper came out, and it got a lot of attention, right? It got a lot of attention from me. I was in Blacksburg, Virginia, doing my PhD, doing a lot of microscopy, looking at cancer, to be very broad. In this paper and another paper, what they found is that when they try to reproduce a study, they try to replicate a study, more often than not, they can't, right? And so that's showing that in Amgen, looking at major cancer studies, 89% of the time, they were unable to reproduce, the study, right? And that was problematic. It got a lot of attention because it was in Nature, and it got a lot of attention because it was kind of shocking, right? If 9 out of 10 papers you can't validate to be true to take into a drug development program, well, that's makes, kind of the castle you're trying to build shaky, right? And so it's being built on sand, and, it's a lot of people's lives, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of opportunity cost. And so this reproducibility crisis, which has been seen in machine learning and psychology across all different disciplines, it relates a lot to the incentive structure, right? You're rewarded for saying something flashy and, that's going to get you into a prestigious journal, not necessarily for telling the full messy truth. And so how do we change that? Well, me and one of my co-founders wrote a paper back in 2014, so over 10 years ago at this point, trying to say, here's how we think this could be changed, right? And that paper is kind of the basis of Cite. And so we're saying, citations, we may not love them, but they are used for, proxies of quality of a journal, proxies of quality of an institution, H indices, all these different things, measuring researchers, et cetera. And what we were trying to say is, hey, they're looking just at the quantity, not necessarily the quality or the types of research. And so we wanted to introduce an R factor, and we don't say this anymore, but the idea is more or less the same. And that is, a way to quickly see, has this report or its conclusions been verified, right? Wouldn't it be great if you could look at a paper and say, hey, that paper's been independently supported, or hey, that paper's been challenged? And historically, that hasn't been really easy to do, right? If you look at a paper that has 100 citations, you're not able to go through all 100 of those papers in any easy way to see if it's been, refuted or if it's been supported. And so this is Cite back in 2018. So you're really getting to see, it in the early days. And what we wanted to do with Cite was to basically say, okay, not all citations are the same. What if we could show the context, right? What if we could go into that full text of the scholarly document, extract out those statements so that you can very easily see how and why, and as you'll see later, where this has been cited. And so this was kind of the proof of concept that really got our eyes open and saying, okay, there's something here, right? We can see that this is an easy way to consume a lot more information, directly relevant information. How can we start to expand that out? And that has basically kind of been the genesis, of Cite. And you can see we've come a long way. This screenshot's old. We're looking at 100,000 users. We're now at I think 1.5 million users, and used by corporations and universities and individuals, around the world. And so we built Cite primarily to make research more reliable. And I think in the age of AI, this is more true than ever, right? AI is exceedingly easy to use, very flexible, very hard to trust. And so we built it to also make research more understandable, right? It's very complex. I can understand the complexity of aneuploidy and chromosome missegregation, SPAG20 and all these things. But if I go outside in my field, it's hard. And so, research impacts not just cancer research, it impacts city planning, it impacts government policies, it impacts everything. And we want to make it more digestible, more reliable, more trustworthy. And this wasn't really our ambition to get, started, but it's kind of become that. And that is to introduce the next generation of citations, right? And so not just to say, hey, this is how citations have been for decades, we have Web of Science and Scopus, but to go beyond that, right? To go forward and say, hey, not all citations are the same. Let's show the context, let's show the intent, let's show the type, so that we can use it not just in a measurement way, but actually like in an information way as well. And so this is kind of how I like to show Cite, is to show the world as it exists without Cite, and then to show it through the lens of Cite. So here I am. This is the main study coming out of my PhD. I did my PhD at Virginia Tech. We collaborated with the hospital in Portugal where we got some cells, as well as the NIH. And so very collaborative like this group across the world, which I think is an amazing thing of science. When you first look at this, it's natural to look at a few things, right? Where is it published? Who are the authors? What are their affiliations? And then some metrics, views, citations, increasingly alt metrics, things like this. If you click through to this, which I would say most people don't even do, right? They just glance at it and say a high number is good, a low number is not so good. If you click through to this, you'll come to a Scopus or a Web of Science or Dimensions or any of these different tools, and they're all going to kind of show you something similar, and that is a list of citing articles. But again, why is this article citing me? Why does this one cite me? Does this one say, hey, we can't repeat what Josh did? Does this one say we use the cells from Josh's study? Does this one, cite 5 times and really engage with it? We're treating all this really rich information as a flat list and a kind of a single superficial number where a high citation number is good, a low citation number is not good. And so with Cite, the main building block of Cite and what we've done is to go into that full text, right? And so this is now the cleaned up version from that 2018 prototype. What we do is show a list of citing articles, but we go into that full text of scholarly documents and extract out the citation statement. And so here, presumably no one on this call has read my study, but you're able to see a paper that was published in 2018 in MBOC. They're citing me in their results section, and what they're saying is, in agreement with previous work, the trisomic clone showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent. Then they're indicating where that evidence is. It's in their supplemental figure S2B. And so to me, this is a very powerful thing. It's pretty easy to understand. It's just showing the how and the why and the where versus the title. And it's important that we all understand this because this is kind of the building block of Cite, right? And I'm going to talk about how this building block, has impacted how we look at, papers, how we look at researchers, how we look at institutions, how we do search. And then, of course, how does this relate to LLMs, so large language models, and what are we doing with LLMs there? And so while this is easy to understand, right, you can see those snippets, you can understand we got it from the full text. Why hasn't anyone done it, right? And the why is because it's really hard. So the first step, and this is showing a lot of work in a simple graph, is that you need the rights to do it, right? You as librarians, as leaders at universities are acutely aware you can't just go get every single article in the world you want, right? In many cases, you're spending huge amounts of money to doing this. And so we, as researchers, we didn't have a library budget. We didn't really have any budget. And so we started with open access content. We then started to engage and reach out and talk to publishers to sign indexing agreements so that we could get access to the full text of subscription-based articles in addition to open access content. And this is, really unique, right? We've spent, 7 years at this point signing indexing agreements with major publishers to get access to the full text to do this, right? To display that information and to go through it. And we're continually signing new indexing agreements. So we don't have every single thing in the world, although we do have all references because publishers have now made all their references open. But we have a very large corpus, I would say the largest corpus, where we can utilize AI in this way and actually display that context. And so that's the first challenge, right? Is that you need the content, you need the rights to do it. And I would say, again, compared to other tools, maybe some that are demo in here, we didn't just plug into open access. We didn't just plug into Semantic Scholar. We are building this foundation as to really build this next generation of citations, which can power a lot of things, from search to Cite Assistant, etc. The second challenge is really a technical one, right? And so once you get agreement from a publisher to get all the full text, most of that content is still in PDF, especially if you're year, pre-2000. Some of it is nice JATS XML, and some of that XML is varying, across journal to journal or even publisher to publisher, but most is still PDF. And we have agreements, with the Royal Society. So we have PDFs from their OCR versions of 1665, and remarkably, we've been able to extract out some information from them. And so to do that, we have used a lot of machine learning to process these PDFs at scale. And it's a big technical challenge because we have to look at all these different formats of PDFs. There's 2-column PDFs, there's single-column PDFs, there's superscript numbers, there's numbers in brackets, numbers in parentheses. There's a lot of different ways of citing an article in terms of formats. And we need to reliably look at and say, hey, hang it all is an in-text citation versus P53 is not. So we identify that hang it all is an in-text citation. We match that to the correct reference in the reference section, and then we match that against metadata from Crossref or DataCite. We then have this deep learning model that looks at the text here, and we'll try to look at, is there supporting or contrasting evidence to the paper and the claim that they're citing? And the way that we developed that was, as researchers, we basically just built this whole kind of video game, this annotation system, where you could look at just the text, you would read it, and you say, okay, I can read this, and I can tell that they're supporting it or they're contrasting it, that there's evidence. And so that was our training data set that then goes to feed a deep learning model that does this at scale, because we're now talking about 1.3 billion growing every day citation statements from the literature. And that's just too much for humans to do, right? And so I, as a cell biologist, didn't just get into AI to be AI, but we're utilizing AI as a tool to extract out all this relevant information to make it easy for researchers, or anyone for that matter, to better discover, understand, and analyze the content. And so that's a lot, but we've also published a paper, and I think this is also a different way or a different approach that Cite takes, and I think it's appreciated by universities, right? We're publishing how we built this, we're publishing our limitations, we're trying to be as transparent, as ethical as possible. And so, this is really how we built Cite. And it was published, it's in open access. It will talk about the different deep learning models. It will give you definitions more clearly on what supporting versus contrasting is, when that doesn't look like that, what is the precision, what is the recall, etc. And we're working on more and more papers. We've published one on retractions. We have another one coming out on citation contextual rankings. And then we're also working on ones, describing how we utilize LLMs in Cite. And so that was kind of our core focus for 4 or 5 years. In comes ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT, very easy to use, very hard to trust, right? And so here is a researcher asking ChatGPT to give a bibliography. That bibliography, that looks right? JAMA's a real journal. It's giving a DOI. This is, again, probably a real journal. Some of these are probably real authors, but it's kind of this Frankenstein of all these pieces put together. And so these articles don't actually exist. And if there's librarians on this call, maybe you're getting requests from students, requests from faculty for articles that don't exist. And that's really a tell that, people are starting to use ChatGPT, all these other tools. And so we discussed that and said, okay, this is an amazing tool. It's not going anywhere else. It's here. How can we harness that, right? How can we make sure it's, trustworthy? And is really kind of the same questions we had with research articles. How can we deal with this information overload? How can we make sure it's reliable and useful? And so, as the early days of Wikipedia, the early days of the web, I think citations have proven to be an important thing, right? PageRank, the way that Google organized this massive influx of information, early days of web, was strongly influenced by citation rankings, right? And they even cite Eugene Garfield in their paper. Similar, I think citations are going to play a more and more important role in the world of AI, in the world of large language models. And so we think, the biggest thing that, ChatGPT and these other tools need is they need citations, right? They need a claim. They need a way for us humans to check this to see if that's right or wrong. And if you think about it, Wikipedia is pretty good. It's an amazing amount of strangers on the web putting something The reason I think it works is because there are citations. If there were not citations, I would say it would be exceedingly hard to trust. And so what we've done is we've adopted this to Cite Assistant. And so I'll show you a little bit of what Cite Assistant does, and then I can walk through different parts of the product, and we can hopefully have some questions and make it a discussion as well, since there's not too many people. And so, say we can keep it in line with my research. You could say, what is the impact of aneuploidy on chromosome missegregation? And so with this, what we've done, plain language prompt, right? Just a question. There's no Boolean queries or anything like this. What is different from ChatGPT? Well, one is that it's going into that huge list of publishers. It's not going to the full web. It's going into the discussion section. It's going to the methods section. It's going in to look in the articles. And so we are applying the sophisticated, powerful AI onto our unique corpus. The other things that are pretty powerful is that how we've designed this is to give you a lot of control in order to give you a lot of trust. And so if you hit settings, what you can do here is say, okay, let's just have Assistant try its best. But best reference and best can mean a lot of different things to people. And so maybe you want references from just 2020 onwards. You can do that. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want to ask, systematic reviews or clinical trials. You only want to restrict to these types of articles. You can also select that. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Oh, and I think I'm logged out, so I need to log in. That will really give you, sorry, let me do this real quick. Really give you kind of the ability to look at this. Oops. And so here, coming back here, you can put the year range, you can put the publication types in. We allow you to select even different models. And so O-mini is, kind of the base ChatGPT. This is a deeper reasoning model. Haiku's an anthropic model. So there's this massive arms race of these groups. They're getting better, they're getting quicker, they're more efficient. And again, we're not trying to compete with that. What we're trying to do is leverage that into a way that makes sense for researchers and students. And so if you select O3 Mini New, you could say, we want high reasoning, we want a deeper response length. And so all these different things I'm trying to show to you is that we want to kind of give you the control, right? We want to help tame this magical beast so that we can utilize it in a way that's actually safe and, kind of trustworthy. And so I'm going to just actually go to O-mini so it's a bit quicker. I'm going to hit apply, and I'll put that question back in. It says, what did I say? Does trisomy in cancer cells increase rate? So let's just do. Okay, so here's the question, right? Do trisomies in cancer cells increase the rate of chromosome missegregation? What this is asking is, if you put an extra chromosome into a cell, does it make more mistakes? And so we put that in. What this is doing is calling the API of the LLM that we're using, in this case, O3. It's developing a search strategy. So here's the different searches that we've run: effects of trisomy on chromosome missegregation cancer cells, trisomy cancer cells, all these different things that I don't need to read verbatim. It then starts to compose this. It identifies papers that are, matching this. It will rank those as well. And so you can choose to consult more. You can choose to get a longer response. You can choose to get a smaller one. You can choose to also really, say, I want a deeper reasoning. It doesn't need to be a minute or 30 seconds. It needs to be very right. And so you can set all these different things. It then does a little bit of fact checking, right? And so now it's looking at what it's written. It's looking at these claims, these sentences, and comparing these claims versus what is, matched semantically in this. And this should finish here. Yeah, there we go. And so here's this output. And here, and I swear I didn't use this just because my paper's in that. But what you can start to do is to look and say, okay, here's what it's talking about, right? In this case, it's saying Nicholson et al. Identified that trisomic human cells, particularly those with trisomy 7 and 13, exhibited heightened missegregation rates when analyzed under controlled experimental conditions. And so, then it's talking about replication, condensation. And so is that right? I can say, yes, it is, but you need as a researcher to trust this. And so what you can do is look over this, right? And here realize and see, okay, here's what they are talking about. They're talking about DLD1+7. They're talking about, chromosome missegregation on both of these, 7 and 13. And essentially, that is what we found, right? Trisomic chromosomes displayed the highest rate of chromosome segregation, and I point to a figure. And so that trust, right, those references, the fact that it's going into the discussion section, that's the kind of differentiator here, right? It's not just utilizing abstracts. It's not just utilizing the full web. It's utilizing, peer-reviewed publications that have experiments, that have statistics, and then have the second level where you can see, okay, not only is it pulling this paper, but you can see that this paper has been supported 5 times, or in this case, the paper's been supported 14 times. And so this is, kind of this chat GPT for research, if you will, that really allows a lot of flexibility, to utilize the best of AI and the best of peer-reviewed publications to look at that. And so I'm going to pause there because I've spoken very quickly at you, like the New Yorker that I am, to see if there's any questions or feedback. And you can unmute if you want, or you can also just put it in the chat, and we can go from there. And there's more to show as well, too.
There's a question in the chat, Josh.
Can you read it to me, or I can stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you in discussions to get subscription journals from Springer Nature and Elsevier?
Yes, we are always in discussions with them, and it will be a challenge because Elsevier, for example, has a competing product, right? They have Scopus. They also have some other competing products as well. And so what I can say is, and this is a good question, we will have millions and millions of full text from Elsevier. We don't have all of their full text, and that will be a challenge, right? But we've joined Research Solutions. We have a deeper partnership with Elsevier now. We are providing the rights and access to many large corporations, to large universities as well. And so we're hopeful at some point we can get it, but I don't see it as an easy thing. And so, we're in discussions with both of them. One is probably easier than the other. And hopefully one day we can broker that partnership, but it will be a challenge for sure. What we do, though, and what I think is important is, while we don't have every single full text article in the world, we do have all their references. So at the base level of a citation index, for example, you're not going to miss anything. And so in this case, you can see we've extracted out multiple citation statements, right? A lot of them. And this is a self-citation. Here you can go deeper and see, okay, we've extracted out citation statements from all of these. What do we do when we don't have access? What does that look like? In all these cases, again, we've extracted out this information. In this case, we haven't, right? And there's a couple of reasons that might be. One is maybe we don't have the access, right? So we can't do it. The other is maybe technically we weren't able to do it yet, right? So we need to improve that process. And that is, again, coming back to that challenge of we're looking at some PDFs that are, from the 1800s or some that are hard to look at. And so this is one thing that, is even if we don't have access to that, and here this is open access, so there's no reason we shouldn't, we still show you that information, right? And so you're not going to miss anything. And, again, it's at the base level of a traditional citation index, but then goes much further by having that context, whereas they don't have any of the context, and we have, a billion plus of these. So it's a good question. Other questions?
Somebody rose the hand, and also there is another question in the
Hi.
chat, but please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Coco from Imperial. Hi, thanks for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. This is really just like a dump of my thoughts. I can't tell, is it your intention that institutions would potentially no longer need to subscribe to all of the individual collections that you've referred to? Because on the one hand, this is like a different functionality, but it isn't necessarily the full functionality. But maybe that's just down to what people are used to.
So if you mean by...
Because it's kind of duplication, like if someone pays for this product and they're already paying for subscriptions to the collections that you've mentioned.
No, so do you mean journal subscriptions, or do you mean
Yes.
like a Scopus? Yeah, so no.
Both.
Yes. So Scopus, I would be happy if you cancel Scopus and took Cite, right? I think, we have more context, they don't. And I think we compete directly with them on a product perspective. With this, what we do is we work with libraries to show their collections. So we're not saying cancel your subscriptions. We also think this is not a replacement from going into the full text, right? So we're making citations more digestible, which we think will actually deal with more, full text. And so when we work with publishers, we don't display just open access. We'll say get from Imperial, right? So we'll show the, through easy proxy or, any open URL. And so we're trying to facilitate that, certainly not cancel that. But in the Webs of Science or the Scopus of the world, yeah, we do compete directly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Was there another question there? I'm happy to have it too.
Yes, there is one. Have you come across Profi and/or thought about partnering to power better peer review and finding collaborators, experts in the field?
Yeah, so we have come across a variety of different groups, and we're very collaborative. And so I can show you a little bit how we do that. And so we work with publishers directly, and I'll just show a few screenshots of that. And so part of becoming this next generation of citations is we don't want to be this interesting project. We want to be, actually thought of as like, here's citations, and this is what we expect of citations now. And I think even if I think Web of Science and Scopus ultimately will try to do what we do, it will be hard for the indexing reasons because one of them is a publisher, and so they have to get all those rights. But we do integrate into many products and tools. We're not trying to replace everything. We think we can enhance a lot of different workflows. And so this is what it looks like on Wiley. This is what it looks like on the Royal Society. You can see they've kept another citation index, American Physiological Society, PNAS, etc. And so we make that information very easy to use in what we call our badge. This badge can be added by anyone, right? It can be put onto a university repository, it can be put onto tools. You can show citations by section, by types. You can use both of them. You can, customize it horizontally, make it smaller, choose to show. And then it's this snippet. And so there have been other tool providers that just go out and use that information. And so we're live in a lot of different tools. I don't think we're live on Profi, but they could add that. They could also use our API integration. We have done also some other stuff in terms of peer review with our reference check. And so, the aim of the reference check, as it suggests, is the ability to upload a manuscript to see, are these references reliable, right? Are you citing anything that's been contrasted that you don't know about, or that has potentially been retracted that you also don't know about? And that could be bridged to look for peer reviewers and things like that, but it's not designed for that, right? And so, I can show you just kind of quickly what this looks like. Again, you can upload a manuscript. It doesn't have to be a published document, or you can upload a published document. And what that does is it's not showing you, these are now not papers citing this. These are the references from it. You can see, okay, here's how it's using it, right? It's using this reference, and it's using it in the discussion section, and here's what they're saying. And in this case, they're using it, but it's retracted, right? They're citing a retracted study. And there's been literature on this where 95% of the time when people cite a retracted study, they do it unknowingly. And that is because we all live with PDFs and put in our reference managers, no kind of good way of dealing with that. So that was kind of the aim of this, is to, help collaborators. Maybe someone did most of the writing, some of the citing, to check these things. Hey, we used all these references. Are we sure those are the ones that we want to base our claims on? Are we missing anything? Whether that's a retraction or, a contrasting citation statement, you can, again, look through and, build that out. And so this is one thing. We did have or we do still have this integrated into some editorial systems. It hasn't caught a ton of traction though, because it's not looking at fraud, right? And I think a lot of publishers are more can we look at fraud? This is more looking at improving and some mistakes that people have made. But that could be integrated, and then the badges could be integrated as well. But we haven't done anything specifically with Profi. Other questions?
No more in the chat.
Okay, so I can jump then to show you a few different things. So I've kind of shown you this reference check. One other thing that I haven't shown, which I think is really powerful, is our browser extension. This browser extension, and speaking of collaborations, you can get for any browser by just coming to Cite and going to product and then going to browser extension. We have that for Chrome, Safari, Microsoft Edge, and Firefox. We also integrate with a UK-based company, Lean Library. Lean Library provides all the off-campus access. This can display through that as well. So again, highlighting that we're very collaborative. Why I show this is a good kind of easy way to get started on Cite. You get it. It's going to start to show you our information kind of everywhere you look, whether that's PubMed, whether that's on the publisher page, and it will start to show you this kind of insight that you would otherwise not even think to look for, right? And so if you click this, here's this Nature article. Maybe you're looking through on metrics to look here, Web of Science and Crossref. And again, one thing you can see is that we're very comprehensive. You click that, it brings you over to Cite. And what you can see is we have basically the same, metadata as the version of record. So the title, the authors, the abstract. What is different is that context, right? And so you can filter it in all these different ways. You can say, hey, I'm interested in, which citations mention human. So it narrows it down quite a bit. You can filter by introduction section citations. There's no fancy AI here, but now you get a bunch of like expert people, saying, what are their key takeaways, right? What are their key takeaways as well? This one's looking at this, which I'm definitely not going to read. IU1, it was identified as a potent and selective inhibitor of USP14. And so that's a one-sentence summary from a researcher on what a key takeaway is. And, again, this is just highlighting there's so much information that lives within citations, and we're only really using it superficially. And so you can filter by where, you can filter and say, hey, are there some differences here? And, again, this is kind of one of the papers that started. This comes from the researchers at Amgen, where they're very politely saying, like, the bottom line is the manipulation of these levels had no discernible effects on their proteins. So, they're contrasting this study. And so this is just like, again, making all that information a lot more accessible and digestible for you to kind of, navigate through. You can do that for any, any article that has a DOI. You can do that, for any researcher. And look at, how they've been cited. On everything, we allow you to set alerts. And so this could be at the researcher level. It could be at the article level. You can also look at this at the institution level. And so here's Caltech, the breakdown of these citations, retractions, withdrawals, corrections, etc. If you click that, you'll see this red X there, and that will also show up on our browser extension. So publishers are very bad at showing this information on their version record, but they do show it. We do show it through our browser extension. And then you can see, this information, what this looks like over time, who's publishing the most in this area, table of articles, etc. And so we have that for virtually any journal, virtually any organization, or virtually any funder. And then the other, powerful thing is, say we want to, look at chromosome segregation. So here we're just doing a simple keyword-based search. What is cool about this is that, What is cool about this is that this is going into the full text of scholarly documents, right? And so here you're able to see, okay, here's chromosome segregation. Here's how it's being discussed in that article, right? Ahead of having to open that, right? So it's not just giving you a bunch of titles and abstracts, which is kind of what we've been conditioned to see. It gives you these rich excerpts. And that can, again, when you're looking through all these articles, really help you to understand more quickly, is this something I want to read? Right? And so we're trying to make it easier, through this search to look through the article and get that insight that you might need, and, to help you find articles that are relevant versus just buying everything or opening everything. You can do everything you expect, from a traditional database. You can build out complex Boolean searches to really get control. These can be saved and shared. And so you can utilize it just like you would a traditional database, whether that's PubMed or other tools. And from this, you can also really tie this to assistance. So maybe you want to look at chromosome segregation, and maybe you want to say, cancer cells. And so here, we're matching specifically on those two things in those phrases where you can see it matching. And what you could do here is basically create this custom dashboard. So I showed you this dashboard that was for a university. You're now creating this based on your search. And you can also do this not just from our search, but by bringing in information, whether that's from other reference managers or from PubMed, and I'll show you that in a second too. So here's the custom dashboard. Here's the breakdown of this content, the authors, etc. You can export this information out as RIS or CSV. You can further curate this, all this stuff. You can also click this and it brings you back to search. But what is really powerful about this is if you come to Assistant and go to Settings, you can select that dashboard and say, okay, I want to only utilize those papers. And so now you can, ask a question, and maybe I'll do it in table mode. Does aneuploidy increase, disease severity in cancer cells? And so here, what we've done is we're utilizing this, only these dashboards. I've also selected, I think I selected table mode. And so it's not going to give you this paragraph output. It's going to give you a table. which you can build out and utilize AI in different ways. And so it's still, it's going through those articles. It's looking at that prompt that you give it, and then it's going to give you one column. Yeah, one column. Here's the response, and then we'll start to be able to build out the response for other columns. And so it's still going, but you can see, okay, here's one that it's answering. Reference 1 provides critical insights into how aneuploidy influences disease severity. And again, this is hard to trust, but what makes it easier is you can look at this and hover over and read this information. And again, this gets all a bit easier once it's actually done. But that's kind of, again, like a different way of harnessing the trust of articles and the power of AI is to build these things out. You can export this out once it's finished, and then you can add more columns once it's done as well. Because maybe you want to know, tell me the cell types, tell me the sample size, tell me all these different things. And so I think that's a very powerful workflow where you're combining the, systematic searches that you might be doing and assistant, where you might want AI to analyze all these different things, right? And so here is, all these different things. It answers that. And again, you can hover over this and look more in that. You can also go ahead and add a column. And apologies, this needs some work. You can add a column and say, cell type, and say, tell me the cells used in this study. You can say, here's a bullet point, add a column, and then it's going to take that prompt, look at the same set of articles, and then go through that. This, again, can all be downloaded as CSV, and is, again, the aim here is to take the power of the AI and, the trust of the articles and the trust of our smart citations so that you can, get through the literature and understand these things, find where there's gaps, find where there's, missing evidence, etc. So again, I realize I'm throwing a lot at you very quickly, so I'll pause there and see if you have any feedback or questions.
There's a question. Can you import articles into the site?
Fantastic. So yes and no. So if you come to Assistant, oh, it's still running. You can upload individual articles. It runs that reference check and then we use it. You can also, it must still be going, or what's going on here? You can also do this through a custom dashboard. So if you come here, I showed you how to create a dashboard from our search, I think. But what you can do, so here's the dashboard that we created from a search. If you go to create new dashboards, so again, product, dashboards, it gets you here. This allows you to import, say, your Zotero library, your Mendeley library, or what you can do is also bring in information from wherever you want, right? So let's say we ran a search on PubMed or Scopus or whatever. We want to save this. So here's chromosome segregation. All these different tools allow you to export information. Export this out as results, take this as CSV, download this. You go here, and basically what you're going to do is grab this list of DOIs. So everything inside is working off of DOI. And then if you come back here, you can say, PubMed, chromosome, here's the DOIs. You can turn off email alerts or turn them on, whatever you want. And then you create that. And so this is how a lot of universities will actually say, we track our papers really good. We want to look at 50,000 of them. And so some universities use this for that. But you can now bring this information in. You can do a deeper search. So again, this started in PubMed. Now you're using the confines of PubMed, but you're utilizing it in Scite, right? And so that allows you to look there. You can then also, again, bring it to Assistant. And so that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to upload these things here. So you can say, hey, I want to use a specific paper, or I want to upload some documents. This is not designed to upload 50 of them, though, and so you could upload one. It does also need to look like a scholarly document because we're running that reference check and then utilizing it. And so you can kind of do both, or do it if that answers the question.
Collado, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Elisa. I'm based at Imperial College as well. I think this sounds really great. It's a really powerful tool. I'm just wondering if you probably mentioned it, but I missed it. Do you need to have browser extension, do you have to be registered to get that little analysis in each of the papers webpage? Because I'm looking at Nature one, just a random article that I opened, and I can't see it. Just
so yeah, so I'll walk you. So let's go to incognito. I think this will work. So you don't need to sign up for the browser extension. Like you go to product, you go to browser extension. I haven't signed in at all. This is, I'm on Chrome, so I would then install it on Chrome. And so, I mean, you would then add it there. And so then it will start to show everywhere once you've done that. What will happen though is that it's only somewhat, useful, right? We're not trying, like we can't give it away entirely free. But what you will see is like, you'll see that everywhere. But if you click through, maybe use this one and I'll open in incognito. What you will see if you haven't signed up or don't have an account is this, right? You'll click through, say you read this, and you'll see, okay, a preview of it, but then you need to create an account for it. And so it's free to have that browser extension, but to have the full experience, you need to sign up and create an account, or we work with the university ideally, and then there's authentication via IP, via email, via Open Athens, whatever the university is interested in.
Got it. Yeah, and just another a comment. I think this is really powerful for researchers that do meta science analysis, because I mean that gives you a lot of information for if you do a review or like a meta analysis on what the references are saying, and much more in depth, and I think it makes it much easier. So really good tool.
Yeah, thank you so much. Other questions or feedback?
There are lots of thanks, Josh, but I don't see any other questions. So,
I mean, the other thing I can say is did we work with Imperial in the past, Igor?
I don't believe so. We just had meetings with some of the researchers and some of the librarians, but we haven't done any major project. So,
okay,
but we do have a lot of individual users, that's for sure.
Yeah, so what I can say is we're pretty flexible. That's also a bit different from Scopus and Web of Science. So, we're not an $80 billion company that's been around for 20 years or however, more than 100 years, I should say. We recognize that universities are under budget constraints and all these different things. And so we work with a lot of universities. We do offer individuals, like if you're a researcher and you want to use it, it's not $10,000 a seat. You can come and just use it, right? And it's, $20 a month or $144 a year. We ideally like to work directly with institutions. And so we do work with, institutions around the world, including UK, but really, I think every geography, almost every continent, there's at least a university or a corporation using Cite. And we're happy to, give trials. So if this is something that you want to bring back to the university and test, I think Ash's contact information is in the chat. We can certainly set up trials. We can do individual kind of training sessions or discussions like this, where I do something similar or someone from the team does something similar to introduce this. And then you can try it for, really like a month or so, plus or minus, depending upon holidays and things. The other thing I would say is that, and this relates to access, historically, Cite hasn't done anything with access, right? It was just everything that the DOI will show you subscriptions and whatnot. We now do have another tool that's called Article Galaxy Scholar. Article Galaxy Scholar is basically filling the gap between where you guys have subscriptions and where you don't. And so what we do is allow universities to say, okay, you can put your collections and subscription stuff so users see it, right? And we'll facilitate that. And then where there's no subscription, you can allow users to buy it or something. And these wouldn't be academic prices. These are corporate prices. But the point I'm trying to make here is we have a lot of universities where, they are going to this a la carte purchasing model. It's like, we want our researchers to use what they consume as opposed to this big deal. And so there's a variety of different universities, and this can help really under budget constraint because you're paying for what you use versus paying for every single thing bundled up into one. And so there's a couple different things that we work with, in different universities. There's Cite, and then there's Article Galaxy Scholar. And I think, Cite helps with the evaluation, the search and discovery, and Article Galaxy Scholar can really help with like collection management. And it works very nicely with all interlibrary loan tools. And, very happy to talk on both of those as well. If there's nothing else, though, I mean, I think we still have 10 minutes, so I'm happy to hang around for questions. I think you got the gist of it. Maybe it's overwhelming with all of this, and so you can watch it back. But again, I think, happy to schedule individual calls with any groups and, go deeper on things, and open up trials if you want, as well.
Elisa has another
Hi.
question, Josh.
Yeah, it's me again. Yeah, I was just thinking whether you have any sort of like flagging thing that tells you that something is not replicable, like this was not replicated, or this was retracted, or
Yeah.
like
So
that
this
warns
is
you.
kind of that, right? So here is like, this article without cite, let's say, has it been challenged, right? You wouldn't know unless you're willing to open hundreds and hundreds of papers. And so what we're trying to do with this contrasting citation is to make it very easy to see, hey, here's where there's some competing information. And that doesn't always mean that it's wrong. It can just mean, like, in contrast, to what was observed in vitro, we found no differences in, these in vivo. And so that is, like, pretty important. And this is, these authors should be lauded for that. It's a self-citation where they're saying, listen, we saw something different in vitro than we did in vivo. And so that's what we're trying to capture with contrasting. In other cases, this one is, researchers don't say this is a garbage study, but they'll say things where it's like the bottom line of the study is that manipulation of this had no discernible effects, which is kind of the, big claim that they're making from this. And so I think that's, really the key thing that we capture here. We do show retraction information. We do also even have non-English content. And so most of our content is English, I think about 94%. But we have content from, around the world. We're unable to classify if that's supporting or contrasting because the tool has been trained on English-based articles, but you can see it, right? And so that will also appear, in search. And this, comes from basically every language you can think of is in there, and you'll discover it also there. And Assistant will also work with different languages.
Great,
and then
thanks.
the retractions, I can show you also how to find some of this. To say you're interested in chromosome and segregation, under editorial notice, you can look at any of this information. And so retractions will show this little red X. And so if we go to this article, so doi.org, and you have the browser extension, here's the X, right? And so this is what we're indicating is a retraction. And so again, like, without cite, like, it's really hard to tell that this is retracted. I used to tweet at this because I got so mad at publishers. And so this can, save you a bunch of time, and that's exposed in the browser extension, then everywhere, kind of you see on site. We have also, published a paper that describes how we've enriched retraction information. So we use Crossref, we use PubMed, we use Retraction Watch, and then we've done some more ourselves. We've made that code open, that data open as well, because largely we don't think anyone should have a monopoly on retractions. And again, this is trying to emphasize that, we want to work with universities. We don't want it to be like this AI tool that replaces all these things, but we really think AI, will be a core part of pedagogy. And we think cite is the approach we're taking is attempting to be the most transparent and kind of responsible one.
Great, thanks. I'm just wondering also, sorry to monopolize a little bit here, just a quick last question.
Yeah.
Do you go, or are you planning to go also to open peer review? Because that you could get like valuable information, right? There's not that many journals that do open peer review, but there's some journals that do, and you get those reviews published as well, and you can get some information there on what
It's a fantastic.
usually.
I think you should join our product because I think it's
I
a
am very
fantastic idea.
interested.
Like, and so I had this idea because I think there's a ton of open peer reviews. There's not one place you can search them, right? And I did a little bit of work. I talked to publishers, and some of them don't even know where their peer reviews are, because I was trying to say, what if we started to make open peer reviews searchable alongside this? Or what if you put those open peer reviews on it? I think that would be helpful. And so we haven't done anything, but it's definitely on the back of my mind. And I think it's just a matter of bandwidth. And so I do think it's important. I do think expanding to open peer reviews and then to other types of content would also be valuable that we currently don't have. So great suggestion. Other questions?
Thank you, Josh. It's really deep dive research product. I was a little bit overwhelmed about the different pathways you can take.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is the one function of the product that it's powerful and good to use, but people don't, for whatever reason, not using it or forgetting it?
Which one? Are you asking which part is the most?
Which one? Which one? It's kind of, because, very often we are primed for, for seeing where our work was cited and so on. Is there any, like, a deep insight that we may overlook while using
I think the
tool?
one that I tried to show is that, like, I think connecting search to assistant is very powerful, right? So people come to assistant, it's very powerful. You can give any question. You can say, write a rap about chromosome segregation, and it will do it. But it's not like perfect. It's not going to include every single reference, right? It's going through our database, it's finding 100 and then ranking them. And so to me, and I showed this, like, I think starting in search can be very powerful, and it's not as like sexy or whatnot. It's like you got to run some keyword-based search, like utilize Boolean queries, but you identify, like, okay, we've done a controlled search. We've got 1,500 articles, whatever it is. You then make a dashboard, and then you use Assistant on top of that. And so I think that's like something that, I've shown to users that had used the tool a lot, and they're like, oh, I never thought of that. And I think it helps a lot, because then you are, like, again, getting a lot of control and a lot of that flexible AI versus like expecting the AI to do everything, right? And because the AI is so easy and you can put in any prompt, it never is going to tell you, like, go try a search first. And I think that is like what I try to, like, kind of coach on, is like sometimes search is better, right? It's not as AI-y, but it can get the answers that you really want much better.
Okay, thank you. I don't know. Does anyone has any final question? Last call.
I'll also,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have Ash's email. You can also email me. And, obviously we're a team, so we're working together. But if you have questions or feedback on anything, feel free to email us. And yeah, there you go. There are my emails in there directly. Let me know, right? And very happy to hear feedback, things you didn't like, things we might not be thinking of. And yeah, I appreciate the invitation as well, Anna, especially on a sunny day. So I'll be quiet now, and you guys can go enjoy it.
Okay, thank you so much. I see a lot of in the chat emails as well too, and I would appreciate if you could get in touch with everyone. Thank you so much for presentation, Josh, Igor, and Ash, and being there. And thank you for everyone who resisted the weather and joined us today. And yeah, it will be uploaded on the YouTube for everyone to view as well, and get in touch with this amazing team.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.